Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for my first impressions on the new Lone Peak 6 from Altra. Don't forget to like the video if you find it helpful and check out my other videos to see if you'd like to subscribe to the channel. The Lone Peak was the original Altra shoe, and it was also my original exposure to the brand. I still have a pair of Lone Peak 2s that I use as garage slippers, and those shoes made such a big impression on me that I made the switch to Altra's zero drop and foot shape toe box and never looked back. The Lone Peak lineup hasn't always been a hit for me though, and after running in the version 3.5 for about a month, I had to take a look at Altra's other offerings. I ended up switching first to the Superiors for about a year. After that, I decided that the Superiors really didn't quite have the stack height that I need. Loved that they were light and really enjoyed running in them a lot of the time, but I wore through them in oftentimes less than 200 miles. They just weren't the right fit for my feet and for my frame. So I switched over to the Timps. The Timps also had their upsides and downsides. I had a lot of good runs in those also, but I always kept my eye on the Lone Peaks, kind of hoping that eventually Altra would address some of the problems that I was having, and I would be able to get back to the shoes that were my first inspiration to test out the Altra brand. The first thing that made me have to give up on the earlier Lone Peaks was just a lack of traction out on the trails. Besides it being muddy on a lot of days, it's pretty wet around here in Juneau, Alaska. Besides that, even more so, I spent a lot of time running on wet rocks and wet roots. And as far as slippery conditions go, those are about the worst. And the 3.5 version of the Lone Peaks was just, it was awful. I could barely get enough traction to keep on going on a lot of days. Sometimes I just didn't even feel safe out on the trails that I was trying to run. So that was a major deal breaker for me. The second thing about the shoes that I left is pretty personal to me. I don't have the hugest volume foot, but I have some pretty significant height in my toes, and there just wasn't room for them at the end of those Lone Peaks. And the toe cap was really stiff, and that ties into my third dislike about those Lone Peaks, was that they just felt really overbuilt for a trail running shoe, more like a shoe designed for the through hiking and other hiking activities that a lot of people were buying them for, but just not right for running. So always I was looking back to see if Altra could put together a newer version of the Lone Peak that would address those problems, and eventually they did. They came out with the Lone Peak 5s about a year ago, and it was amazing for me to be able to get back into this shoe. They fit me better than the Superiors and the Timps ever did. They feel great underfoot on a lot of trail conditions, even though they were still using the same, calling it the same Max-Track rubber. Something about the new lug design, and I'm guessing the rubber compound has been updated over the years. It just is better. It's better than a lot of other shoes that I've run in. So the traction was so much better in these. They were not light, but there were a lot of things about this upper that felt more like a running shoe, so I liked that. And I had learned to size up a little bit from the Timps and the Superiors and the way that those lasts are designed. So I was in a size 11 for a while and just felt like I had tons of room for my feet to fit into the shoes comfortably. It was amazing. Amazing, but not perfect. And that's where the Lone Peak 6 comes in. The first thing I'm hoping they're able to address with the Lone Peak 6 is the tendency in the 5s to wear through the upper in this one particular spot. So I'll try to get it in front of the camera where it can focus right there, and I'm sure you can see a little bit of the wear through. It actually is a full hole in the outer fabric of the upper. There's a little bit of an inner lining in these that it's not worn through yet, but I have a friend who has just kind of ripped through the whole thing right there. After just about 300 miles, I actually have 500 miles in this pair of shoes, and so the fact that the upper is wearing through right there is not really a big surprise. Shoes are gonna wear out eventually. These actually also have started to get some wear in the back of the heels in a place that's pretty typical for me to have some wearing out in shoes. Even though the outsole on these, I've been using them on ice and snow a lot of the time over the last few months. And the midsole, actually the Ego midsole, it is good stuff. It's been holding up incredibly well for, like I said, over 500 miles in this pair of shoes. So obviously we won't know whether the Lone Peak 6s are going to have that portion of the upper make it past 500 miles for several months and a full long-term review. But anyway, that's one of the things that I'm hoping for. The second thing that I was hoping for with this pair of shoes is probably common to all runners with all shoes, and that is I was hoping it would come out lighter. And that's something that I can say even on day one. The Altra Lone Peak 6 delivers in a big way. Claims from Altra is to have gone down by ½ an ounce. In the kind of the main sizing where they do their weight measurements. I found that with my particular pair of 10.5s in the Lone Peak 5 and this new pair of 10.5s in the Lone Peak 6 that I actually went down almost 0.8 of an ounce, over 3/4 of an ounce in each shoe. So that's pretty incredible. I have to admit, like feeling them in the hand, it's pretty difficult to tell a difference on the feet. You know, just walking around, you know, with one shoe on each foot, you'd probably be hard pressed to tell a difference. But I have to think that, you know, over 10 miles of a run, or like, you know, a 15 to 20 mile long run, it's gonna be something that pays off in those runs and is just gonna make the shoe feel just more enjoyable to run in over longer periods of time. Just a little bit less fatigue for the feet and the legs carrying the shoes around. So that is pretty awesome. And so far, yeah, it even just feels right. When you look at the upper, the switch from kind of like a sewn on extra thicker material to a lot more overlays on, you know, the main upper material that already, you know, for most portions of the shoe felt plenty durable already. It is a great switch. So there are a few other things like new lacing, like eyelets for the shoe, different heel pull than we had before. Yeah, when you put the version 6 on, they feel a lot like version 5 of the Lone Peaks, and that is, as far as I'm concerned, a really good thing. The bottom line is that the Lone Peak 6 takes a shoe that I loved and makes it better immediately in a very tangible way. And if you have ever liked running in a pair of Lone Peaks, then I can almost guarantee you're going to be a fan of the Lone Peak 6. And if you haven't tried Ultras or haven't tried the Lone Peak line specifically, but you're looking for a really comfortable trail shoe that's super versatile, can handle a lot of different trails at a lot of different distances, and just feels great underfoot, I would highly recommend checking out the Lone Peak 6. I hope hearing these thoughts about the new Lone Peak 6 have been at least a little bit helpful to you, and that you've enjoyed the views of some of the little bit of running that I've been able to do so far in the shoe, and I'll catch you next time.